I am just going to tell you guys exactly how everything came about, everything that I'm about to deliver to you. Yesterday was a holy day of obligation in the Catholic Church. It was the Feast of the Immaculate Conception. A day of obligation means that a day in which you are required to attend Mass outside of, obviously, typically Sundays. And so as soon as we concluded this podcast, I grabbed my jacket and I ran out the door, okay? And as I was sitting through Mass, deciding, I guess, what was on my mind to pray about, for whatever reason, I got on my knees and I was not expecting this to come out, but I just focused my prayer on wanting something to be delivered to me, a piece of evidence that would help us put together the full picture of this assassination. Obviously, we all know that what we are being told is not true. We all know that nothing that we have been presented with makes any practical sense, but there are sort of smoking guns in this that are missing, right? It's one thing to point out all the lies, but we need to also have solid, concrete proof of something that took place that was out of the ordinary in the days leading up, maybe, I don't know, a planning session. Well, I got back home after this very intentional prayer and did my routine, had a very late dinner, went up and said goodnight to the kids, got myself ready for bed, sat in bed, and I thought, you know what, I'm just going to open the tips box. And I kid you not when I say that it was the very first email that I saw, the very first email that I opened up. And it really didn't have any details. It was a young woman, and she said, "You really should call my friend. It is absolutely urgent, and he has information that you need to hear." And don't tell me why. I don't know what came over me, but maybe it was this intentional prayer. I said, I'm just going to call him right now. 5 minutes, not even 5 minutes after this email hit my inbox, I was calling this person and I had no idea what it was going to lead to, whether it was going to be a totally insane person or whether or not it was going to be a very swiftly answered prayer. The person that I spoke with, his name is or was Harry, and he told me a story which I have since fact-checked various elements, the elements that I could fact-check, and it's legit. This is a legit story that I'm about to share with you, and I want to say before I relay it that the descriptions of the people are based off of his own memory, but the facts pertaining to where he was, whether he was where he says he was, for the reasons that he says that he was there, he is being honest. Okay, I can tell you that he is being 100% honest, and you are free to look further into this. I am certain he is going to probably be doing a lot of interviews in the near future. I can also factually state that there was an incident report, so this was recorded, and what transpired on September 8th that caught him by surprise was something that he thought was a part of a broader military conspiracy against him. He could not fully comprehend why what was happening, okay? So let's start actually 35 years ago, because you need to know who this man is. In 1990, this young man named Harry Myers discovered something that would shape the next 3 decades of his life, okay? He was at the bottom of the military chain. He was just 20 years old, and he was put on what was actually a brand new command, the first ever Joint Task Force 6. And this new command was being created down at the border by President George H.W. Bush, and it was presented to the American public as, look, a war on drugs with the help of Colin Powell. And it should be noted that this took place, just to kind of get you back into what was going on at the beginning of the 1990s, this took place just after the Iran-Contra affair, right? The Iran-Contra affair was from, I think, 1981 to 1986, happened under Reagan. And for those of you who are not read into massive CIA scandals, this was the scandal when the American public got to learn that our CIA was actually trafficking drugs and weapons throughout South America. a scandal which, if you guys have followed our Epstein series, we now know that he was also involved in the Iran-Contra scandal. It essentially shook the foundation of Reagan's White House. And during that time, during Reagan's tenure, George H.W. Bush was the vice president, okay, throughout this scandal. So when George H.W. Bush then decided that he was going to run as a president of the United States, and he did run, and he ran in 1988, just a couple of years following that affair, he had to really hit hard on drugs at the border, and declare that this White House was going to do all that it could to stop these drugs from flooding into America. Take a listen to him saying what they were going to be cracking down on.
This is crack cocaine, seized a few days ago by drug enforcement agents in a park just across the street from the White House. It could easily have been heroin or PCP. It's as innocent looking as candy, but it's turning our cities into battle zones, and it's murdering our children. Let there be no mistake. This stuff is poison.
So you hear the directive from the then president, H.W. Now, our protagonist in this story is Harry, right? He's 20 years old, and he's at the bottom of the military totem pole, and he gets attached to this new command, this new Southern Command. Previously, there had never been that joint task force, and specifically, he was a part of an operation that came to be known as Operation Catacomb. He describes himself, and I'm going to put this in quotations, as a lowly military censor guy assigned to this Joint Task Operation 6, and they were to cover half of Arizona and Mexico. And I'm going to read this next portion of his story directly from him, okay? And I quote, "In just 6 days, I planted sensors, translated data, and skipped the chain of command and gave proof of the existence and pinpointed the location of the first ever discovered Sinaloa cartel underground rail tunnel. By passing directly through to lower Border Patrol agents, I skipped command and directly, a Border Patrol agent was able to skip his command and directly sought a warrant to raid the tunnel, which avoided tipping off any compromised commanders that were working with the cartel. Thus, why it resulted in such a big bust. Most importantly, it did not give time to remove photos that were on the walls on the Mexican side. Where our Joint Task Commander, who was a high-ranking Border Patrol, was actually in the photos in that house, posing with El Chapo and Felipe, his architect. And there were other U.S. Marine officers and Mexican law enforcement officers and military that were in those photos, okay, end quote. So just to be clear, he discovers this tunnel, somehow skips the chain of command. Now they find this massive tunnel and, oh, wait, why are military commanders and high-up people in the military in pictures with El Chapo? What's going on here? I'm going to pause here to let you see an old news clip regarding this explosive discovery that Harry made.
The tunnel was called one of the most sophisticated drug smuggling schemes authorities have ever seen. Using jackhammers and torches, federal agents broke into the concrete reinforced tunnel at a warehouse in Douglas, Arizona. 30 feet underground, agents walked for 100 yards through the 5-foot-high tunnel. It took them under the Mexican border to a house in Agua Prieta. There, they found an air compressor, a sump pump, a small trolley car, and a hydraulic jack. It was used to lift up the floor inside the living room of the house, where the smugglers would start their illegal trip to the U.S. Authorities said when the tunnel wasn't being used for drug running, the smugglers would flood it with water.
Let's say we came over here with some technology trying to detect this. It would look like an underground stream if it was flooded.
Federal agents said the tunnel cost at least $1 million to build and had probably been in operation for 6 months to a year. Last November, customs agents received a tip that a sophisticated tunnel was being used to funnel cocaine into the United States.
This type of tunnel is not an amateur operation. It's a highly sophisticated engineering feat that took place.
Mexican authorities were also involved in the investigation and the raid. Earlier this month, police seized 2,000 pounds of cocaine, which they said came into the U.S. through the tunnel. The drugs were headed for Southern California.
And what's not said in that news clip is there were pictures of United States military men in that house. What happens next is predictable given what we now know. Harry's superiors take the credit for the bust, and he's going to continue what happens. I'm going to, again, quote him verbatim. Quote, "On the surface, I was given a small reward, an Army medal. I have the write-ups for those awards mentioning me and my critical role in this mission's success. That said, U.S. Border Patrol members who recognized me as being the agent responsible for the bust did not like seeing that I wasn't being appreciated more and resented my higher-ups for taking the credit for the discovery. Somehow, in the immediate days after the bust, prior to the United States side getting the photos from the Mexican authorities, my information was given to the cartels. In continuing the mission, me and one Border Patrol agent were sent to Naco, Arizona, where I was approached by a cartel member confirming my identification by rattling off my mother's name, address, my high school, my friends, everything listed in my clearance packet, which was supposed to be locked in the custody of the Joint Task Force 6 commander, whose picture was with El Chapo and about to be discovered. We avoided being taken hostage or shot, sneaking away and driving out of that little town. I was taken back to Fort Huachuca with the U.S. Border Patrol agent I was with, believing, since I was just a young 20-year-old, that I must have somehow compromised my own ID. The next day, I had a debrief with the Army Criminal Investigation Division and a prosecutor from Tucson, Arizona, informing me of how my ID became compromised. I was told that I was then going to be put in witness protection. My orders restricted me from any further work in counter narcotics, from being stationed on or south of the border, and it prevented me from working with Border Patrol. It was a Band-Aid while they prepared and got approval for me to be put into witness protection. Also, to protect me, the mission and the prosecutions, I was also put under an NDA gag order, which was dated out, okay, look, it says 1990, to May of 2025 to prevent me from mentioning this entire ordeal. The witness protection entrance never happened. The ball got dropped. I never got contacted for it. From what we uncovered, a deal was made with the compromised U.S. Border Patrol agent commander. Okay, so let's pause and just recap there very quickly. And I'm going to tell you what this has to do with Charlie Kirk, okay? So I guess in a sentence, a young military man did his job excellently. He accidentally stumbled upon, or actually, accidentally stumbled upon the fact that our government was implicated, not in fighting the cartels, but working with the cartels. And suddenly he realizes after some time that the government then feeds him, or somebody spitefully, perhaps his commander, fed him to the cartels. And now he's on the run for his life. What happens over the course of the next 35 years is he's hacked. He says that he goes through abusive litigation. He is harassed. He says there are narco attorneys that attack his credit. He has police records, by the way, for all of this. He has presented evidence for this. But throughout a certain point in time, these police records were virtually disappeared. He had been reporting that hitmen were coming after him. He had names. This was a 35 years long ordeal. He now has all of his paperwork thanks to some county clerks who did the right thing and were able to dig up these records. But you name it, this man has lived it throughout the last 35 years, okay? Fast forward to May of 2025, May of this year, and Harry Myers, who now has a new name, by the way, which I'm not saying, but he is finally released from this 35-year military-grade NDA. So what does this now 56-year-old decide to do? He decides that he's going to confront his past. He wants answers, okay? He wants to know why he was never protected. He wants to know if the FBI had been informed, and if so, which they were supposed to be, why they didn't do their job. Why didn't they protect Harry? He was working for the military and he did his job. He makes up his mind that he's going to deal with this in person. He is going to travel from his home in Washington back down to the very base where this all began, right? To Fort Huachuca, in Arizona. He's going to revisit the past. He's going to get these answers. He books himself to stay in a hotel on the base, a military hotel known as Candlewood Suites. And this is on the evening of September 8th. I want you to remember that, okay? He has been so thorough. He has sent me timestamps, bookings, reservations, went through his call logs. I was like, I want you to pinpoint when everything happened. So he gets to the Candlewood Suites at approximately, on September 8th, 5:37 p.m., checks into the hotel. And you can imagine he's a person that pays a lot of attention to his surroundings, right? When the cartels are after you and your family and you are compelled to change your name, you pay attention to your surroundings to see if anybody looks shady. What he notices is somebody who is special forces in the lobby. He said, you just know when you're dealing with a special forces guy. And he is in the lobby, and a young woman, comes down thereafter. That young woman, who at the time he did not recognize, is with him. They kind of fluff around in the lobby while he's checking in. He's on the phone with his wife. And thereafter, the two of them get into a green pickup truck and they drive off. Okay. The next morning, now we're September 9th, he wakes up at around 5:30 a.m. in the morning because he wants to see the sunrise. He says that he then fails at finding the Army Criminal Investigations Department. So he drives off base, just a little ways off base, to get some coffee in Sierra Vista. While getting that coffee, he runs into some soldiers. Again, this is just all God at this point, who happen to be wearing 10th Mountain Division patches. And he's like, that's my old unit. What's going on here? Like that, he thinks his unit's gone. Nothing's going on with this unit for a long time. That it's been torn apart, or I don't know what the military expression is for that. He strikes up a conversation with these young guys, and they tell him, "Oh no, the old Joint Task Force 6 is now being continued, and it's known as JTF, Joint Task Force Southern Border." Now, for those of you who are like me who don't know, like literally what it sounds like, Joint Task Force, meaning like you can get the Army, Navy, everybody kind of working together on something. And they're like, yeah, it's now JTF Southern Border. And they give him directions of how he can actually get to the new command center. They tell them that they're actually currently borrowing a building down there. And he tells me that there would have been no other way he would have discovered where it was. So his intention was to go to Army CID. Now he's like, wow, I can go directly to the actual JTF 6, which is now being continued, and get some answers. What luck. It is now around 7:37 a.m. when he enters the new or temporary JTF headquarters. And he sees two guys, and he's pretty impressed. He's like, whoa, these are, again, military term, E4, E5s. He told me that means that they're lieutenant colonels, and they are the ones that are checking him in. He happens to walk in at the exact time that they are concluding a meeting, and he is kind of even more impressed because he sees about 12 lieutenant colonels. He tells me, you do not see that many people, that many E4s, E5s, E6s. Please, military guys, forgive me for me not knowing what the proper vernacular. But he just goes, well, what's going on? He's like, you don't see this unless you're at the Pentagon or you're at the White House. You just don't see this many high up the food chain lieutenant colonels. He's going, man, this is a pretty important meeting. And then he sees three men walk out, one of which is the person he identifies as the person that's the center of the action, right? He said you could just tell this is the most important person. And he has gray hair. He's got glasses. I believe he said that he's about 5'10". And at this point, he sees that the person that is with him, and he said, certain that the person that is with him is Brian Harpole. Yeah. Okay. Oh, it's about to get even more interesting. So, and again, I am going to say allegedly because I wasn't there, but I have spoken to this guy and I I very much trust what he is saying. I think he is very credible. Okay. So he sees Brian Harple come out, this older guy, and he has, what then happens is first the guys that are checking him in are friendly. He explains to them, yeah, this is what happened to me. I just want to speak to somebody. They're like, yeah, let me help you. Then all of a sudden, after Brian, who he believes to be Brian Harple, who he's not obviously recognized at that time, he would not have known that was Brian Harple, but he remembers him, obviously, because then the biggest political assassination since JFK happens. Suddenly, somebody hits the panic button. And two captains come out and they escort him out of the building, and they begin what becomes a 7-hour interrogation. Okay. They think he's a spy. How did you rumble this meeting? How did you know this meeting was taking place? He's being asked a bunch of questions. They're putting pressure on him. They're gaslighting him. I actually want to, if you give me a second, I want to read exactly what he messaged me about what took place. It's just, it's incredible. It's actually just incredible how he describes what their strategy here of attempting to gaslight him into believing that he was a spy or that he was working for somebody. And he's like, no, I'm just here over an incident that happened 35 years ago. I'm trying to get answers regarding it, and they're putting pressure on him. I'm going to write this verbatim. He says he's being interrogated. He is, quote, being accused of being a bomb threat because I was special forces in the military, EOD in the military. They then attempted to try to gaslight me to see if they could angle an accusation of me being a threat to others or myself. When all of that fell flat, they then conferenced with base commander after I assumed they verified that I was not there to spy on that particular meeting. They decided it was okay to send me off post. That's when I drove to Tucson. I got a room. The next morning, I turned in my rental car. I got on a plane back home, and I had to stop in Salt Lake. Upon landing and turning on the phone, my wife is telling me about Charlie Kirk. And again, this was just a coincidence. I happened to be in the airport at the time that you are talking about all of those strange flights that were taking place there. I did not notice anything helpful other than the fact that the airport was not very crowded. So after 7 hours, he explains to me that they were going to, they debated holding him for 48 hours for this perceived, perhaps maybe bomb threat spy thing that's happening. And he's thinking, can you imagine this? They're paranoid, but he's paranoid and thinking, oh my gosh, this is more like Sinaloa cartel stuff. And I'm being treated like this because I've wanted to speak out about this story for 35 years. Both of them are wrong. Okay. Both of them are wrong. This really is just a coincidence. And adding to this coincidence is the fact and that he got the commander's name that obviously that questioned him for this long. He says this was the guy that was in charge, the commander. And he said he was approximately 36 years old. He had brown hair, the one I'm talking about that was leading the charge on asking him all the questions and interrogating him, and that his name was Captain Neff. I'm going, now, I have the same question that you have because I've looked and it does seem that, and I never even questioned this, whether or not it's potential that Blake Neff has military connections as well. Like, I guess that kind of like, I just thought this is a producer of Charlie Kirk show, but it is interesting that somebody, and this would be brother, cousin, I don't know. This is the person that interrogated him. And eventually he says was a person that had a heart and realized that he was not a part of any spy network and eventually escorted him off of the base and onto his way. That's a lot of coincidence for me. Now he says to me, he communicated this to me very clearly. He said, Candace, I know how these meetings work. These are the meetings that are had ahead of an operation. Like when an operation is being confirmed, you have these final meetings and they involve all of the higher ups, and you are trying to do this in a very isolated location where, you know, people are not going to accidentally happen upon you because they've got something to say about what happened 35 years ago. And that is what he happened upon. And I don't know what to make of this information other than he feels that he then recognized these people. He feels certain that he recognized these people in the days following Charlie Kirk's assassination, when a bunch of people are doing Fox News. And obviously then we've got a massive event at a stadium and everybody is in front of the camera eulogizing him. He feels confident that he recognizes these people and that needs to be shared. He's willing to tell a story. Like I said, I have verified. He has sent me so many documents, everything from his high school graduation certificate to his military documents, to the police records, to everything that he is speaking about that happened back then, NDAs, judges, things that he's been in court with fighting just to get out his story of what happened 35 years ago when he did the right thing, when he stumbled upon. And boy, does he have some luck. Boy, does he have some luck that he goes from one government conspiracy to what he now believes he stumbled upon, which would be another government conspiracy. Okay. He said that this commander, Neff, by the way, was the commander of force protection. Best he could tell, he did not get the first name. He did get an incident number, which I should have had prepared for you, but I can find it here in our chat because he sent me that too. He said there would have been no record for this if they didn't swarm me as if there was a bomb threat, because now, of course, there is an actual incident report, and he believes that this can be FOIA requested. And that report number, if you will bear with me, I'm going to read that to you all because I think this is going to take really the whole world to investigate. It is 8611-2025-MPC 446. So that is the report number that was given to him by this Captain Commander Neff. And like I said, he has given me I could have just put up documents upon documents, certifying that he was there, certifying that this happened, whether or not his descriptions and whether or not the people that he thinks he actually saw at this base, I don't know. What I will say is that something that I could easily have done was to see whether or not I asked him, did you see Dan Flood? No. Well, that checks out because Dan Flood was with Charlie in Korea. And I am wondering about that. Why would you want to go to Japan a day before you have a college campus event, right? You have Charlie on the 5th and on the 6th of September. He is in Korea doing an event. And then on the 7th, he's in Japan and he is on CNN News Japan speaking. And so, yeah, on the 8th, if that's when he left, maybe he left on the 9th, you got a 12-hour flight back home. And I have questions and somebody out there knows something. And I don't know what to say other than this feels right. This feels right to me. This feels to me, as we were speaking about yesterday, about global trafficking and cartels and the government involved in this somehow and implicated in this somehow in ways that we don't quite understand, but that we know involves the highest possible levels of corruption, that this feels right. And like I said, he is not hiding. He is done hiding. He has been silenced for 35 years, running from his life and being gaslit about that in the same way that I am being gaslit about that. And I have a very terrifying update for you regarding people that have been trying to assassinate me. And speaking to him was, I guess, emotionally qualifying, because exactly what he's been going through, I've been going through. He didn't have the platform to be able to get his name out. And I said to him, do you want to come out? And he said, yeah, I've been silent for 35 years. He said, I watch your stuff and I can't believe that you got this email. And I said to him, the chances of me seeing this were basically slim to none. And it was the first email that was in my box and I just called you. And I feel God moving in that. And despite just the utterly demonic and satanic action and the level of collusion that had to take place, for 9/10 to happen. I do also know, as I have always known spiritually, that they wouldn't get away with it. And I think Charlie, whatever vision he had, in which he knew his life would be short, and which he knew that I would not let this go because I somehow feel tied to it. And we're seeing more and more every day that somehow I am tied to this. I think that this is God operating. I really do. I think, bless this man. Thank you so much for your service to this country. I know that he said he would love to meet Ian Carroll, and I guess he's watching his stuff, and I will obviously make that happen and much more in the coming days. I don't expect the feds to reach out. I don't expect them to be interested in this angle or this potential meeting that I think they probably already knew about. I do hope, though, that somebody else saw something, and somebody knows the quickest way to FOIA request that stuff. Somebody knows how to get behind this so we can get information. I've given you the dates. I've given you the times. He has given so much more. And I just thank God that I saw that email.